Hi everyone, and welcome to the PuddyMod YouTube channel. And as promised, we were going to do this 457 GearX job. That's right here. And this was what was sent in to install this gear set into. This is an S2000 differential. It's AP2, and it came in pieces, and it came with some new stuff to be used. Which pretty much most of it I won't be using. Some of it, like the seals and stuff, yeah, we're going to use that, but not a lot of others. There's parts in here that don't belong to an S2000 differential, such as this part right here. I'm not sure why this is in here or what it was from, but it's not Honda S2000, so that's not going to be being used. These crush tubes, I'm not going to go there. I think this is a road course car. This is going to be used for, racing, and that's not really going to be an adequate thing for that type of setup for this this job. Anyway, the input flange here is AP1, so the car is AP1, but the case is AP2. And little interesting things that came along with it was somebody had made a set of caps for this thing. Looks like they did a nice job. It's an interesting setup. The only problem with things like this is that when you have such sharp corners, they're actually more susceptible to breaking than round ones. And, so there's a lot of angular things going on here. So, but all in all, it's a good tight fit, so it should be fine. There's better hardware. This is a 12.9 socket head that's being used on this. Also, what's cool, this has got an old school Honda Performance Osgiken LSD. Let's see if we can get that focused in there. You can see where it says that Honda. Once I get it cleaned up, Honda Racing, right there. I don't think they make these anymore. This is an old Osgiken that is tuned by Honda standards, for Honda standards. You can see how it's put together. It's how this piece is connected to this piece. It's in the middle. It's got a seam. Later model units, this part here is actually cupped inside this part here. So you do the lid or cover to this barrel is set up differently. It's a different set of clutches. This is, like I said, this is an older unit, so this has the two-piece spider gears inside of it as well, something that had done away with because there were some issues with that in early years. So but it is a cool unit. I've restored a few of them, and I've never had a problem with a Honda Factory Performance Osgiken LSD, so I'm not going to poo-poo it or anything. All I'm just saying is it's an older unit, and that's about it. But I thought it was kind of cool because I'm thinking a lot of you guys probably haven't seen one of these before. I don't even think I've had one on the channel yet. I've done tons of them in the years before I really put anything on the channel, even though I've had the channel forever. But now here we have one, and that's kind of cool. So, all right, let me get all this stuff cleaned up. I just deburred this cover because there's a few things that are missing that I'll add to this stuff, bearings and things like that aren't going to be, going to be replaced. And we're going to put a PuddyMod solid steel sleeve in it. And it should be pretty nice when it's all fun, all done. There goes that speech impediment. Well, stay tuned, guys, and I'll be right back. We have our LSD all set up, Honda Factory Performance Osgiken, and this was some spare parts that was included in this package here. This is some type of a shim. I'm guessing maybe they thought this was going to be a thing for here, but it's kind of loose and really doesn't fit very well, and it's really, really thin, but I don't know. I'm going to keep it on standby just in case. You never know. It may actually be about the size that it needs, and then we can just go ahead and grind one of these, which is a factory shim, to the proper fitment. This here is a factory sized shim. Okay, we're at 100 and just a little over 124,000 sticks, so 124 and maybe a tenth or two. Okay, and that's a factory shim. All right, the next I want to give to you guys is this one, which is also a factory shim, but ground in-house here with what we do is custom grind. We can do precision grinding here in shop, and this is the shim we're going to start with. Hold on a second. Okay, and this is the one that we custom ground to start with. This is 110 thousandths thin or thick, 110,000 stick, and factory is 124,000 stick. They go a little thinner, like 123. I just grabbed this out of my shim pack to show you as an example of an average size shim. So this is about 14 thousandths thinner than a factory shim. And that's what we're going to start out with. We're going to see where it gets us for pattern and then adjust from there. If we have to add a little bit here, we'll grind another shim, or if we have to take a little bit more off this one to get where we need to be, we'll see. Well, let me go ahead and get it set up on the pinion. We'll put our new bearing on and get it set up. Not a very heavy pressed fit, fairly light. All right, we're good there. All right, we're getting ready to set the pinion now. And the reason why I have not put a pinion seal in this yet, and I'm not going to until I'm sure of my setup, is because with a 457, these take a much thinner shim in this case. And what will happen is you can bottom out the spline here on the input flange. It will go to a point where you do not get proper preload. No matter how much torque you put on that pinion nut, you're still never going to get a preload that's proper. And I can't tell you how many of these I've taken apart over the years that guys did not set them up right. They weren't backspaced, and they never got proper preload, and they had pinion float because the flange just wouldn't reach where it needed to reach. It bottomed out. And so before I set up anything and get this thing to where it needs to be, I leave everything open to find out if I'm going to actually have to use two slinger washers in here, such as this. I'm only going to set up with one right now and see how it goes. And if it doesn't work out, if I bottom out, then I'll take it apart and I'll put a second one in there. And that will get me where I need to be, where I will not bottom out that spline, and I'll get proper preload, and then I'll go ahead and set up the ring gear and LSD next, see how we go. All right, we have one spacer shim or slinger washer in place, and we managed to get preload, so that's great news. We won't have to double it up if this works out, this particular shim, but if I do have to go thinner, then more than likely I'm going to have to put a double spacer washer, slinger washer on the back side of that pinion, outer pinion bearing. All right, let's get the LSD and ring gear in place and check out and see what we got for a pattern. All right, I just did the backlash. We're at about 6 thousandths. These gears have a wider backlash, between 6 and 10 thousandths is safe with this gear. But yeah, as you can see, we are definitely too shallow with the pinion. We got to bring it up. We got face contact on the gear. So, which is great news because we won't have to backspace or back shim this. It will use a standard slinger washer without doubling it up. And but we definitely want to try to improve on this pattern. And it doesn't actually sound terrible. I mean, you can hear it a little bit, but which is normal. Like when these were Richmonds, you could really hear them. They made a pretty fair amount of noise on the bench. So this is good news to see that this isn't quite that bad on a bench, which is pretty cool. All right, let me go ahead and raise this pinion up and give it another shot. Okay, all set here to put the seal into place. It's only going to take one back washer, spacer, slinger washer. It will not require two. I custom ground another shim, or I should say Bobby did. And we're going to set that up with that new shim. I put in 120 thousandths, and the pattern did improve quite a bit, but I got some noise with it, a little bit more so than I had when it was lower. So went ahead and took another 5 thousandths out, and so it's kind of like in the middle of everything. That's where the sweet spot laid at. I mean, these gears still make noise. It's just the nature of the beast, the way they're made. They're not, lapped nicely like the factory gear sets are. So, and the 457, it's just an inherent to a gear wind, and that's one of the reasons why, is how it's manufactured, how it's made. All right, we're going to go ahead and put the pinion back in here with all our new bearings, seals, everything's brand new in here. New gear set, and the only thing that is still hanging around is the old school Honda Factory Performance LSD, which is a really cool thing to have, and but everything else is a brand new setup. Okay, before we put this thing back together again, I wanted to show you guys something about these aftermarket gears. Is that the spline is just a straight cut spline. It's not a tapered spline. So you see how it just kind of falls on there. The issue with that is it's susceptible to leaking gear oil past that spline. So I will not be greasing that. Instead, we'll be using a Honda Bond sealant on that spline. So once it goes in for final fitment, I'll apply that, and that'll keep this spline from leaking out past the washer and the pinion nut and becoming an issue down the road. It's another thing that a lot of guys didn't realize or didn't think about when they put these things back in the day when they put these things together years ago. Because if you have a 457 in your car, a lot of people, they had these in their car and they actually disconnected the drive shaft because they heard gear whine. They wanted to see what was going on. They were going to pull the rear end. They pulled the drive shaft, and all this oil would come out, pouring out from between the drive shaft and the input flange here, getting past that spline there. So to prevent that, like I said, we'll put a Honda Bond seal on that, and you won't have that issue. All right, there we are at 116 thousandths. Got a good contact pattern on both sides. It doesn't sound too bad. Backlash is consistent around the gear by about a half a thousandths to 3/4 of a thousandths. Not unusual with an aftermarket LSD and an aftermarket gear set to be, like have about a thousandths run out, even after balancing. So this is actually really good. All right, we're going to take it apart now and start setting it up for a PuddyMod solid steel sleeve. It had a bearing when it came in, and the client said everything was good, but actually it wasn't. It felt kind of crunchy. I put a new outer bearing in because that was not supplied, but the inner bearing was supplied and was supposed to be good, but it was not. And so we replaced that. We have a new pinion bearings in here now. Of course, everything is fresh. So let's set up the PuddyMod solid steel sleeve. All right, this is going to be our first try with the sleeve. We're going to see where we're at and then adjust it as necessary. I have a old nut and washer here that we'll be using for this setup, and then once we get there, we'll go ahead and we'll put in the new nut and the washer that was provided, as long as it's still flat, which I'll check and make sure it's okay. And if it's okay, then we will install that one as well. If not, we'll replace that as needed. All right, let me get this thing together. Let's see where we're at and how it's going to have to be adjusted. All right, we are set. PuddyMod steel sleeve is machine fitted now. We got a perfect load on them inner and outer pinion bearings. Everything's super clean spline threads, clean spline on the inside of this input flange. Has to be super clean so our Honda Bond will adhere and seal properly so we don't get a leak. It's kind of a finesse thing, putting this all together without cross-contaminating the grease that you'll put on here that goes into that seal, because you don't want to put that in dry, but you also don't want to get your Honda Bond contaminated with the grease. So it's a fun little adventure we're going to do here. All right, we're all set. There's our Honda Bond inside. Everything's super clean. We have our grease on the outside. A little bit of grease on that race as well, so everything slips in nice. Our new nut, our washer. Now we got to do the assembly stuff. Here we go. Beautiful, nice and smooth. Perfect. All right, let's get the carrier in. All right, there we are. There's our backlash. We're between 5.5 and 6 thousandths consistent around the gear. Got a good contact pattern. And all I got to do now is torque down our bearing cap bolts, put our clips into place, and we can install the cover. Came out pretty nice. All right, I let this 457 sit overnight to get that Honda Bond seal to cure up. get ready to box it. And before I do so, we're just going to turn it here. And it's pretty quiet. I mean, considering on the bench, I can't turn it real fast and hard because I can only turn it by hand. But it sounds pretty good. So that's a good indication that this thing, well, I'm sure it's going to have gear wind, but it may not be that bad. Anyway, let me get the stand off of it and finish up the video. All right, well, there you have it, all buttoned up and ready to go. This is an unrestored differential exterior-wise. All I did was clean it up. I cleaned up the mounting areas so they would have a nice, clean, flat finish to them and surface. The client had media blasted the rear cover themselves. I went ahead and cleaned that up. It was a real mess inside. The media had gotten embedded into the aluminum, so it was a lot of work to get that out of there so we wouldn't have any chance of a contamination into the bearings and things. So you guys, you decide to do any kind of media blasting on something like this, it's not really recommended, but if you do it, you got to be very diligent about how you clean it out. It has to be super clean. Or you could end up, ruining a set of bearings, a set of gears, Oh, yeah, before I end this video, this is the next one that came in. Kind of funny how people ship stuff in. And this was actually from a JDM salvage yard that this one came from. And no stub axles, super rusty. Once you get all the oil and stuff, everything off of this thing, you're going to see how bad it really is. And the arm is left on it because it is seized to the cover. So that's going to be fun getting that apart. But yeah, this is our next victim. And you'll be seeing that here shortly on the bench. And thanks for watching again, guys. Stay tuned. Oh boy, this is going to be fun getting this thing apart.